Hi, Steve from Wandsworth Physiotherapy here. So we see a lot of people with patellar tendon pain, and there's lots of different things that can affect the patellar tendon, such as Osgood-Schlatter's in an adolescent, or a patellar tendon rupture or an avulsion fracture. But the most common patellar tendon pathology is patellar tendon tendinopathy. Now this comes about when somebody increases their loading, so they go from running 3 times a week to 5 times a week, or they change surface or run at a different speed, or they start playing basketball or volleyball and they start to develop knee pain below the kneecap at the front of the knee. Now what happens is the patellar tendon was coping with the loading that it was asked to cope with, and then for some reason it now maladapts and it doesn't cope with that loading anymore, and the microstructure within the patellar tendon, a portion of that tendon becomes degenerative and it becomes a weak and a painful tendon. Now, how do we diagnose it? Well, it's very much on symptoms. So a patellar tendon will be stiff and sore in the morning. It can be stiff and sore going up and down stairs, standing up from prolonged sitting. It will have this warm-up effect during the day, or even with sports and activities. Oftentimes you're able to still play sport, but you've got this nagging pain at the front of the knee. It's typically sore to touch, and when we look at on ultrasound, we can see a thickened degenerative tendon with what we call hyperemia. We see lots of blood vessel growth into the tendon and inflammation in the tendon. Now, how do we manage it? Well, as with any tendon problem, there's 2 main things we need to do. We need to decrease your loading back down to what it was like before the tendon was painful, and perhaps even less than that. And we need to instigate a patellar tendon loading program, patellar tendon strengthening program. Now this, you may have heard of the Alfredson protocol, where you're doing single leg decline squats on a decline board. Well, this is perhaps a little bit obsolete nowadays. It still might work, but more research, particularly from Konsgaard and his group, has shown that there is general strengthening that's required for the patellar tendon, general lower limb strengthening for the quads, for the hamstrings, for the calves. We need to do reasonably heavy loads, both eccentric and concentric contractions, and then just also strengthen the tendon several times a week. Now, once you've got that under control, then there's some adjuncts to treatment. And perhaps one of the most common things that we will use now is shockwave therapy. Now, there's videos and articles on the site about what shockwave is, so if you need to find out more, go and look those up. But essentially, it's a pressure wave delivered to the tendon to try and stimulate some micro trauma within the tendon, to stimulate some blood infiltration, some cellular activity to try and repair that tendon. Now, any tendon recovery is going to take months rather than weeks. And as that tendon is regenerating, recovering, you're doing your strengthening exercises and you're managing your load, the tendon will slowly start to recover. And then finally, if those things haven't worked, we might consider an ultrasound guided injection into the tendon. We could use some PRP into the tendon. The research is mixed on this. Some evidence shows that it works. Some evidence shows that it's perhaps not very useful. Or we could also do a high volume infiltration around the tendon to try and strip off some of those blood vessels and nerves that have grown into the tendon. So if you're suffering from patellar tendon pain or pain at the front of the knee, and you're not quite sure what it is, and you want to get a diagnosis, a treatment plan, and get back to what you love doing, then come and visit us. We'll be able to assess you, scan you, and help you get back onto the road of recovery.